In the Texas summer of 1973, a group of counterculture filmmakers created what many people have called the most terrifying film in motion picture history. At the time, nobody making the film had any idea that they were making a film that would be talked about 40 and 50 years later. Today we're with the cast of that film: Ed Neal, who plays the hitchhiker; Bill Vale and Terry McMinn, who played Pam and Kirk; Alan Danziger, who played the van driver Jerry; Ed Gwynn, who played the truck driver; John Dugan, who spent 140 hours in makeup to become Grandpa; and Kim Henkel, the writer and I guess co-producer, the guy who created it all back in 1973. The working title of the film was Leatherface, which would then change to Head Cheese, and finally, at the suggestion of the head of the Texas Film Commission, Warren Scarron, would infamously become known as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The cast was made up of local talent brought together by local friendships and familiar acquaintances around the Austin, Texas area. Most people brought their own wardrobe. The stunts were performed by the actors themselves. There was one stunt person who did stunts for the star Marilyn Burns. Now, speaking of Marilyn Burns, 5 of the cast members have passed away since the film was made. Marilyn Burns, who played Sally, passed away in 2014. Gunnar Hansen, who played the killer Leatherface, passed away in 2015. Jim Sedow, who played the cook, passed away in 2003. Paul Partain, who played the wheelchair-bound Franklin, passed away in 2005. And Robert Corton, who has a brief scene as the window washer at the gas station, passed away in 1985. And of course, the director of the film, Tobe Hooper, is no longer with us either. He passed away just in 2017. As we go through the film, I hope that you guys will speak for Marilyn, Gunnar, Jim, Paul, and Robert as we go past their scenes. And if you know of any anecdotes that we should be aware of involving them, that we will include those.
The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5.
You know, I used to hang out a bit
in particular
with John Larroquette in a joint called the Rain Check Room in L.A.,
it is all the more
which was an actor's hangout.
But had they
And
lived
he
very,
knew
very long lives,
that I
they
played
could not
Grandpa
have
on the
expected,
Texas Chainsaw
nor would they
Massacre,
have
and he
wished to see
never
as much of the
mentioned
mad
that he
and
did the
macabre as they
voiceover
were to
on
see
this.
that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of
I
the
don't know
most
if he was
bizarre crimes in the annals of
embarrassed or what.
American
He was
history. The Texas
He had a successful
Chainsaw
television
Massacre.
career.
Well,
I think
maybe
John
Kim
Larroquette came in and shot that, recorded that for $50 in about 15
and a bag of
minutes.
weed.
No doubt.
My birthday, August 18th.
I'll be there.
Oh, yeah.
How did you come up with that date, Kim?
We knew it was your birthday all along,
did
Terry. It was
not.
a plan.
You lie.
It's celebrated on Twitter every August 18th.
Trust me, I get a lot of happy birthdays.
Oh, I bet you do.
I do.
Yeah, what is that sound, by the way? Does anybody know how they made that?
Well, I've talked to Wayne Bell about that, and he keeps that a closely guarded secret. Of course, it's been replicated a number of times.
And it's just lifted from time to time, right off the soundtrack.
So is he going to divulge that in their tech meeting today?
Well, we shall see.
Some of these images are just 4 frames or 1/6 of a second, so they're subliminal. You're not really aware of them, and
that's a beautiful shot.
That is a beautiful shot.
Texas is this hour's top news story.
Oh yeah. Warren Scarron is also responsible in part for this character.
Small rural Texas community of early this
He's lovely.
Officers there discovered what appeared to be a grisly work of
That is, of course, the cemetery in the ghost town of Baghdad.
a second body.
I
Baghdad.
wish I had had a scene with him.
Cemetery. Subsequent investigation has revealed at least a dozen empty crypts, and it's feared more will turn up as the probe continues. Deputies report that in some instances, only parts of a corpse had been removed.
I was at a screening in Houston where people walked out of the film at this point. They were already too scared.
Those lily livers.
Sheriff Jesus
There's a real skeleton under that guy. At the time, you could purchase them from India, and we actually bought a real skeleton.
Oh my God. You know, when we were in Germany, the people in Germany told us that the film had been just unbanned in 2013.
oil storage units continue.
That's about right.
They're kind of sensitive to massacres over there.
Well, you know, if you think about it, though, if you've ever watched any German horror, it is just the most vile stuff. And it dawned on me when they told me 2013, because I was so surprised. I said, well, you know, they have so much vile horror. They must have just totally forgotten about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, it got washed away.
Toby Hooper did a wonderful job of creating these images that are not really conscious images. They're just these background images. You know something is really, really wrong with this environment, but you don't know what it is.
This footage from the sun we got from NASA, Ron Bozeman managed to wrangle that from them. But,
Oscar winner, Ron Bozeman.
That's right, for Silence of the Lambs. He was in both of the Ed Gein movies, produced by Ron Bozeman.
On a sad note, he used my shirt in a faraway shot, and I never got that shirt back. And to this day, I'm still upset with him.
He sold it on eBay for $20,000.
He must have. He must have.
The grudges in Chainsaw go on for decades.
I introduced this film in Grapevine, Texas, many years ago, and everybody else was supposed to be there with me, but they went to a titty bar. But when Paul Partain rolled into the shot in his wheelchair, he got a fucking ovation.
Wow.
It brought tears to my eyes.
Hope they had lube.
And that's, of course, Paul Partain as Franklin. And you guys talk to me about this scene, because you're all in it.
It went on forever. Although it only looks like a few minutes, it went on like a day or two.
Paul Partain was a great whiner. He was absolutely the opposite in real life, a sweet guy. But, you know, as a whiner, he did a wonderful job.
Oh, he was a great whiner. Those lines of mine came very easily, right off my tongue.
Acting. It's called acting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's what, there was acting in that, because there wasn't enough breeze to blow Franklin in his chair down the hill.
Enough breeze.
I assume Paul did this stunt himself.
It would take a hurricane.
I think it was called a heat wave that pushed him down.
The condition of retrogradation is contrary or inharmonious to the regular direction of action.
People still talk about Saturn in retrograde.
That's my shirt. It's gone.
So's my swimsuit.
Let it go, Alan.
I don't know.
Jerry, it just means Saturn's a bad influence. It's just particularly a bad influence now because it's in retrograde.
And by the way, Saturn is in retrograde until November 3rd, folks.
Aye.
Did you know that?
No.
No, I didn't.
Well,
That's so
I, of
interesting.
course, get direct messages from authorities on these things. And someone sent me a message this morning with the link.
That was my back there. You can see my back for a second. I played
Amongst
Teenage
others,
Cowboy #1 in this scene.
That's
John Henry
Henry
Falk.
yeah.
He was incredible. I used to spend time with him on going on the location, and I grew up in New York listening to him. He was
Lovely
blackballed.
man. I
He
did a
was a
play with
wonderful
him
guy.
before we filmed this. And Jerry, the guy that takes Marilyn, he and I were in a play together right at that time, The Rainmaker.
Yeah.
And he was
Oh, yeah, he
wonderful.
played Tall Cowboy.
Big, tall cowboy.
Yeah.
This is Joe Bill Hogan. He's also no longer with us. A wonderful
He was
character
a
and part of
fucking
Yeah.
trip, man.
Kim, where did you round up all the people for this scene in the Baghdad cemetery? Looks like there's 50 people that showed up for this.
Oh, I have no recollection of where we got them. They're probably local people, but it's just been too long.
Why was John Henry Falk there?
Well, I knew John Henry from around town, and Karen Kirkendall, his cousin, was also in this scene.
Which scene was Karen in? She and I were in a play together. She was wonderful.
She was in this cemetery scene.
Was she? I didn't even know that.
I did Love with her, the stage play Love.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was sold out every night.
Yeah. So a lot of these people were from the Austin theater scene.
Okay.
See those buildings there?
Was Toby doing a lot of, I guess Daniel Pearl was doing a lot of handheld inside that van to get those claustrophobic van scenes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There were 8 of us inside the van.
Oh, my God.
Tell
And
him
the
where,
windows,
tell him where
everything was
Ted
closed
is.
up.
Kim, tell him where Ted is.
In the back, the 3 of them were in the back.
Freaking out and everything, and then have to come up and bash him 2 or 3 times.
Daniel Pearl must be laying on his back or something to get these.
No, Ted Nicolau is laying on his back with a blanket over him, with a nogger on his chest.
Well, they don't do it like that anymore. Now they got this big air gun that shoots a bolt into their skull and then retracts it. It's just boom, goes boom, and it's just
Franklin, I like me. Please change the subject. No, that's terrible. It's still going on.
I saw Partain doing some business with his feet a minute ago, which is what you see a lot of times with paraplegics. They don't really know which way their feet are pointed, and he had his kind of sitting across each other.
What does he look like?
the son of a bitch is going to smell just like the slaughterhouse.
You guys are all so young and good looking.
Thank you.
What happened?
Lone Star Beer.
Time happened.
Well, they say time is a great healer, but a lousy beautician.
And here you are, Ed.
Here
Gravity.
comes Ed.
Yeah, we couldn't have this scene.
Weird.
I think we just picked up Dracula. Sal, you work at that place? Oh, no.
How did you get stuck way out here?
I was at the slaughterhouse. I got an uncle that works at the slaughterhouse.
Those stabs were made out of raisins.
My grandfather, too.
Occasionally he'd pick one off and eat it just to make people
Yeah, but
sick.
Toby wouldn't leave it in the film.
Hey, man, did you go in that slaughter room or whatever they call it? It's the place where they shoot the cattle in the head with that big air gun thing.
Oh, that
Gun's
no
no
good.
I was
good.
in there once with my uncle.
No way. With a sledge. See, that was better. They died better that way.
Well, how come? I thought the gun was better.
Oh, no. With the new way people put out of jobs.
You do that?
Look.
So, Ed, how did you prepare for this?
They don't send the heads away.
You took these, huh?
Yeah.
Franklin.
You know how many times I've been asked for the recipe for head cheese? Like I carry it with me, like I have it in my pocket. Oh, wait, let me get that for you.
Head. And they boil it, except for the tongue. And they scrape all the flesh away from the bone. They use everything. They don't throw nothing away. They
I had to eat a fair amount of head cheese
muscles.
during the dinner scene, and I actually kind of dug it.
Me too. I just
My
started
grandmother
getting it at
used to make
Central
it.
Market, and it's delicious.
Yep, I like it.
It's really
Also
good.
like freaking out my friends when I talk about it.
Yeah.
I like it. It's good.
Kim and I were at a showing. Remember that in Kingsland when they put the 50-foot screen up?
Oh, yeah.
And they had a head cheese eating contest, and Kim and I had to sit there and watch these biker guys throw up after they downed about 2 gallons of head cheese.
Lovely.
Yeah, Kim said, "I'm never coming to another one of these ever again."
Understandably.
Well, he was just looking for an excuse, never having to show his face.
I don't know. No, they were projectile. A little girl, don't you, Kim? Remember, a little girl won the contest. This little girl.
I would put it out of mind, Ed.
I told you, I'm never coming back there. Ed, I'm sorry, I'm never coming. No, but the big biker guys, they were. Bleh. The little girl went, "This stuff is really good. I like this stuff."
There's one of the Walker scene, one of the Walker moments.
Yeah.
It's such an easy gag and so effective.
Oh, man.
All right.
Looks so damn real.
Looks real.
Well, with Ed Neal behind that life, I'd get out of there too.
So, you know,
He enjoyed it so much.
Look, Ed, you're just so good.
a lot of young people, when they see this movie for the first time, they say, "Oh, it's young people going into the woods and then they get trapped," you know. But it was actually the first movie about young people going into the wrong side of the tracks and not being able to get back home.
Thank you.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah, it was. This was the first counterculture horror movie, in the sense that, you know, the young people are oppressed by the old people, and it was actually the first movie to make rural America the bad place, as opposed to urban America being the bad place.
Oh,
Right.
We love it when the Orientals come up to the table, like if you're signing autographs, they go, in your Texas, the people really like this away out of from the city. I go, no, not really. Just a couple.
Take me to my house.
Kim, did we come out before or after The Exorcist?
Before.
Before.
Yeah.
It's real close.
Well, couldn't you just walk? I mean, if it's so close.
You could have
Marilyn tosses that line up. I mean, is it, couldn't you just walk?
Brother makes it real good. You like it.
Better push on, man. Don't, Jerry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We'd love to have you come all the way with us.
Yeah, but you know, Jerry says no, so you're out.
That's it.
It's a good picture.
Bill had the best costume because I said, Toby, can I wear my pants as tight as Bill's? He went,
You can pay me
no.
$2. It's a good picture.
You could, but they
you
won't
were
look
all
as
jealous
good.
of my costume.
I had already had that
Yeah,
part.
he's got that. No.
It was in the contract.
It's interesting that when this movie was criticized, they always emphasized the fact that it was in Texas. It could only happen in Texas. The scary words were not chainsaw or massacre. The scary word was Texas, you know, especially when New York intellectuals would talk about the film. And yet it doesn't seem that, you know, no one has an exaggerated Texas accent. There's no, if you didn't know the title was The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it could presumably be somewhere else.
Right.
Right.
The
I
Rhode
think
Island
John Henry
Chainsaw
Falk
Massacre.
had the most Texas accent of the whole group.
That's true.
And Franklin.
Take a hike.
You know the whiting, the hand thing with the blood on the. I've had people approach me from the spirituals. section of Roanoke, Virginia, and we'd like you to decipher completely for us the writing on the side of the van. I mean, I'm not going. I hate to disappoint you, but I was trying to cover for them because the van was pulling out at 1 mile an hour, and cinematically that would have looked like unless you did something.
And Alan, were you actually driving the van?
I was, and after the scene, I no longer picked up hitchhikers. I was so freaked out about it.
Okay.
Oh,
And a girlfriend and I, on the way down to see the film for the first time, from Dallas to Tomball, I had a Volkswagen bus. We just smoked a big fat joint. We'd stayed up all night drinking. We were, feeling pained. And my girlfriend said, "Oh, hitchhiker." And I said, "Oh, what does he look like?" And she said, "Oh, he looks okay." We picked him up. He got in the back of the van. And he started talking about having gone to see this movie at a drive-in the night before.
Oh, weird.
And he went on, and he said there was this chick on this meat hook. And my ear, I was like, oh my God, it sounds like, because I hadn't seen the film yet, And I didn't have any makeup on, which is illegal in Texas, but at any rate, I pulled up my sunglasses, I turned around and I said, "Do I look familiar to you?" And this guy. Anyway, I wish that this guy would show up on Facebook, because that is a true story.
I'll be damned.
That's funny.
I know.
That's Robert Corton that we just saw.
So you quit picking up hitchhikers, and I started picking them up. Boy, that's telling, isn't it?
This is my favorite scene coming up because one of the takes.
Alan, tell him about it.
One of the takes, John is coming up to talk to me, and I inadvertently hit the windshield wiper, and it splashed all this soapy water on Jim Sedow's face, and he's trying to say his lines. And soapy water is just dripping down. And both Bill and I, we lost it. We lost it so much that Toby ended up walking off the set. And thankfully, Kim was able to finish it up. We were toast.
Besides, look what your brother did to the door. This is my favorite scene.
Jim Sedow as the cook. Did they really sell barbecue at this gas station, or was that an art direction?
No, but they do now.
Yeah.
I know they do now, yes.
Those things is dangerous. You're liable to get hurt. We'll be careful. You don't want to go fooling around other folks' property.
He was
Some folks don't like it. They don't mind.
the window washer guy. Is wonderful.
That's your daddy.
Yeah.
He was a friend of Marilyn Burns.
Yeah.
Yes. Very
From
close.
Houston.
Jim Sedow was?
No, Robert.
No,
This guy.
the washer,
Oh,
Robert.
Robert, they actually shared an apartment in L.A.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Them girls now, they don't want to go messing around no old house.
In this scene, next to that Coke machine, they have now a metal bench, that's a tribute to all the cast members, and all of the names of the people that have passed are gone. And they have under coming attractions my name.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
He was really he was so proud to show me that, and I got totally creeped out.
Okay, I'll go with
Alan, you need to hit the drum after your jokes.
By the way, I delivered that Coke machine and then took it back to the bottling plant afterwards.
Well, that's back when you were into Coke.
This movie is full of great 1970s fashion. Both
Yes.
the shirts, the bell bottoms.
Terry, what have you been offered for the shorts? 20 grand?
Oh, well, I don't have them anymore.
But that's
Did you guys
only if
make
she
me
has
Yes, you
leave
do.
those
Yes, you
again?
do.
Hey, Kim,
have
did
to
you
be
guys
dirty.
make me leave those?
Say again?
Did you guys make me leave my costume with you?
Probably.
No, I think that was the light man.
So, so here's the story on those red shorts.
Yeah.
I had gotten for Christmas from my parents a Honda 100 motorcycle. And so I needed some jeans for, riding the motorcycle. And so I went down to the Cadeau, which was a store on the Drag, a very popular store, right across from UT on the Drag. And I bought those cranberry jeans, and I wore them all that winter and spring, you know, driving my motorcycle. And then it got to be summer, and I needed some shorts, because it was hot, you know, by June. And so just before we filmed, I had cut those off. And that's how those shorts.
Kim, there has been a lot of speculation about the astrology and the occult symbolism in this part of the movie as sort of, people wondering how that relates to the cannibal family. Did you have anything particularly in mind?
Let's say a lot of things have evolved around those things, and I think more is going to emerge on that subject in the upcoming months.
Really?
Yeah.
He keeps dropping all these little teasers. I mean,
Yeah,
I asked him if we're going to get any more info about this. He might have all up.
Well, we actually have a couple of things in the works that might be very revealing. I'll shed a little different light on.
You're saying that was
a lot of fun anyway.
You saying that was sleeper symbolism to be revealed 47 years later?
Yeah, there's a whole story there to be revealed.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
this was my first morning there. Kim had picked me up at the airport. I was on the red eye from Chicago, and the first guy I met was Paul Partain, and he was sitting. He had a little conversation circle set up with some lawn chairs and stuff, like a semicircle for everybody to sit around on break, and he was sitting all alone in his wheelchair in the middle of his conversation circle because everybody hated him, And he had this white Cadillac, 1967 Cadillac convertible with fins that would kill you if you ran into it from behind. Like if you were on a bicycle behind it and you hit the brakes, you're dead. And he said something to me. I introduced myself. He goes, "Well, sidle on up, take a chair here, partner, and grab yourself a drink." And he had the truck open.
Hey, wait a minute.
And actually, it might not have been this morning, but it was at this house. But
What for?
he had the trunk open on his Cadillac, and he had an enormous cooler, like a construction crew cooler, filled with cans of Budweiser and bottles of soda pop. So 7 a.m., I'd been on an overnight flight and grabbed a can of Budweiser and sat down with him. And we became fast friends.
Right after my grandmother died.
What is this building? Where is this building?
Pay close attention. This is the only time Pam laughs in the
It was
whole
my first
movie.
time really on a feature film set. So.
This was located actually directly across the street from the original Chainsaw House.
Okay.
Yeah, we just discovered it. Go ahead.
Between takes, Toby and I were discussing The Last Tango in Paris had just been released.
Yeah.
Which,
I wanted to tell you.
I got to tell you,
to tell
that
you,
was pretty controversial itself.
Hell
at that
yeah.
time.
I never saw it.
What were you going to say, Bill?
Well, just that the direction from Toby, when we looked up at the spiders, he kept saying, think of it as pubic hair. That was his direction to me. One of the few times he gave me any direction. That was it.
You know, Bill, I actually had blocked that out.
I love this.
I think you told me
watched
at one
this
point,
scene
Terry,
being
I
filmed.
think you told me at one point that you and Bill were not, you thought you were married when you were doing the role.
We did all of our background character. You know, we dreamt everything up ourselves. We'd sit there for hours and we'd say, well, you know, let's discuss our characters. And we actually decided we were secretly married, and we hadn't told anyone about it. So yes, Bill and I were married, but nobody knew about it.
I love him.
Paul is so good. Paul is so good.
Yeah.
Paul stayed in character too.
God.
He didn't go in and out. He was like,
Not even when he smashes his hand in the door
Yeah,
frame.
he actually runs into the door jamb and smashes his hand. It's just so.
I interviewed him. He said he was mostly used
the
to.
floorboards fall through too, and he falls part way into it.
Paul said he was mostly.
He was never friendly to me on the set. You know, he was, I guess, always in character. But I just, you know, after 4 or 5 days, I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm done.
We met after years of not seeing each other, and he walked up and gave me a big bear hug, and he was such a gracious man, and we were hugging, and he leans back, and he still got a hold of me, and he says, Ed, have you finally forgiven me for stealing your raspberries thing? And I said, finally, Paul, I've let it go. we had dueling raspberries. He said, it was so wonderful I had to do it.
Oh yeah, and Toby kept saying, "Give me some more raspberries."
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Egging him on.
He did.
I've often wondered if somebody could edit the raspberries things together. It would be funny.
Oh, we missed some opportunities with you.
Paul said he wasn't aware that. He said he was so used to theater that he thought he needed to maintain character the whole time. He was not real familiar with working in film, and he didn't realize that everyone despised him so much.
He had
Well,
done
had we
a
known he
film that
cared
was
at
later
all.
called Love and Molly, which I think the original title was like Molly, Gid, and Johnny or something like that.
It's what's his name? Can't think of the writer's name now.
Bill Whitlock?
Name?
No.
Not Whitlock.
I don't know.
I'll never forget what's his
picture
name.
show guy.
Huh?
Larry McMurtry.
Mercury, right?
Oh,
I always get
Mercury.
those two mixed up.
Yeah.
McMurtry, yeah.
And I didn't hear what you said, Kim. How does he tie in?
The Love and Molly movie connect, right?
Yeah, Sidney LeMay directed a film called Love and Molly based on a McMurtry novel, and it was shot out toward Bastrop right before we shot Chainsaw. Marilyn, I think, had a small part in it. She was also a double in it, and Paul Partain had a small part in it.
Right. I believe I remember that now.
Yeah, Love and Molly was a huge Columbia picture trying to take advantage of the success of Last Picture Show, another Larry McMurtry project.
Last Picture Show.
It turned out to be the biggest flop of any Larry McMurtry film ever made.
Who was the female lead in that?
Universally despised, and then right after that, Chainsaw becomes one of the most successful movie, probably the most successful movie in the history of Texas. So,
Yeah, you know, Larry McMurtry's
the $60,000 movie
the
beat the
guy that
$6
did
million
Cheeseburger
movie.
in Paradise and stuff like that.
Lonesome Dove. He wrote Lonesome Dove.
But his
Lonesome Dove,
brother-in-law is
Brokeback Mountain, almost everything Larry McMurtry touches becomes a hit.
Yeah, he's
But not Love and
fantastic.
Molly.
I've read all of his books. I read him years and years ago.
Quite a few people involved with Chainsaw were also involved with Love and Molly.
Love and Molly, yeah.
Hey, come here. Come here, let's
But Terry, you were acting in a play every night while you were making this film, right?
About halfway through, but I was rehearsing every night, you know. And then toward the last, I don't know, about the fourth week that we were filming, then we started, I believe it was when we started production, you know, 4 nights a week. And I can't remember, we didn't film 7 days a week. Maybe I did matinees. It was at Mary Moody Northern Theater, which is St. Edward's University. And it's a theater, it's an arena stage. And
That was south of the river, right?
And there were quite a few University of Texas Drama Department people involved here, right?
Yes.
Like you, Ed, and Bill. Bill, I think you.
I was at UT. Marilyn and Bill, and who else, Bill?
Gunner.
Edwin.
Gunner, yeah.
No, Gunner wasn't in the drama.
No, he was a writing student.
He was in the English department.
Yeah,
He was
English
running a
Creative
poetry magazine.
writing student.
Yeah.
creative writing, yeah.
I was at the Goodman Theater at the Art Institute of Chicago.
Everyone had a theater background.
I was doing serious plays at the time. I was a serious thespian, and we were doing Shakespeare on Wayne. And when Toby came to do the audition, we were like, let's get this guy out of here quick. We got acting class. So I did all that crap that my nephew does, and Toby was like, and a couple of days later, here comes Kim. You got to be in our movie. Come on, sign it right here. Right. How about Kim?
Here comes the shot.
Let's go.
Are we out of sync here somehow or another?
This is the first real.
There we go.
I love the way Bob
This is the first real shot of
painted the tooth up.
interior of the house. People were living in this house while you were shooting here?
No,
Oh,
they
yes.
they went away.
They left
Didn't
for
they
a month.
leave?
No, they were living there
Yeah, they
originally.
rented
The house was being rented by friends of Bob Burns. That's how we came upon it. And then it happily was right across the street from the house there on Quick Hill that we used because that's how we came upon that house. And then one day when I was wandering around the larger perimeter of the Quick Hill house and discovered that
Deserted house.
well, that's what I'm talking about, the deserted house, but I'm talking about the trees that we ran Marilyn through, that stand of dead trees that were so dense that she got caught up in. We're just right down the hill from there. So almost all of our locations conveniently appear within a quarter of a mile of one another right there.
Yeah, she loves
Something
Bill,
about
you
that
die
photo.
so beautifully. You die so beautifully, Bovell.
One of the best things I did in the whole movie.
It was
And
outstanding.
I have to tell you, it was one of the few things Toby and I collaborated on.
But
And I wish we had done that more in the movie. I think it would have been, I would have been better, the movie would have been
Yeah,
better.
when we got
anyway,
inside on those indoor scenes, Toby got involved in the much more.
I
But
think
up
what's
until then, I felt like he was a ghost.
I think what's shocking about that first.
Over there, stand there, start, action, you know.
I think what's shocking about the first death is how sudden and brutal and how fast it's over. You
Right.
know? And so
Right, and then Pam gets right up to go in.
Next.
Next.
Yeah.
I think that's motivated
I
though.
wanted
because
to
you don't-
set the
you don't
tone
think-
with the
You
first
don't think
death.
anything like that could. She's not guessing anything like that could happen.
Nah. She's just thinking he's, in the back somewhere. Kurt?
Terry, one of my favorite movies of watching this with audiences is there was a young teenage girl, and she stood in her chair up, screaming at the screen, "Do not go in there!
yeah.
What the hell are you thinking?" And the audience was laughing like maniacs. And she looks around and she realizes I'm standing in my theater chair. And she kind of went,
Yeah, I was the chicken wrangler.
This is the genius of Bob Burns
You
here.
were the chicken wrangler. How was that, John?
Well, when we did for the close-up on that chicken, and we did wild chicken sounds. Me and Wayne Bell.
Yeah.
I was laying on the floor with a broomstick, poking the cage, getting the chicken to make noise so that Wayne could.
Well, I'll tell you another.
The camera, maybe I don't know, maybe Lou Perriman and Wayne Bell and I were in there shooting the chicken and recording chicken noise.
I'll tell you another chicken wrangler story. I may have told you guys this before, but it was really difficult to get live chickens, mature live chickens, and they kept dying on us. There was actually a slaughterhouse down at the end of Red River Street, right up, almost on the river there. But they wouldn't let you, they wouldn't sell you a chicken right off because they were going to butcher them. But then a number of them had escaped and were, running around in a pen behind the slaughterhouse, and this, pinned-in thing was about 40 by 60 feet. But I could get one for a quarter if I went back there and caught it. So I was out there half the time in the morning doing a Rocky Balboa trying to chase down a damn chicken.
The glamour of showbiz.
So you could torture it, John.
That was kind of a mangy old thing.
There was something terrifying about a chicken in a
So
cage.
inspired.
That,
Chicken in a bird
I don't know why a
cage.
chicken in a cage is terrifying, but it was.
Into it, Joe Bob.
And
you were great. You were great here, Terry.
Don't think I didn't concentrate on not hitting my leg on that door frame.
But you perfectly kicked off that. You kicked off that shoe.
That's when I kicked off my shoes, and don't think I wasn't happy about that.
Yeah,
that was premeditated.
Going down.
Oh, this is where Bob Burns really shines, right? With this setup.
Yeah.
And that is a great screen.
This is
there.
where that moment is where a quarter of the audience at the Chicago Theater on State Street got up and walked out. I told Terry, you got a walking ovation in Chicago.
We basically stole that scene from Frankenstein. I think it was the 30s version of it. You only see there's a little butcher stall that he comes walking past, and he hangs the butcher on his own meat hook, but it's all out of frame. But you see the bottom half of the butcher's body, and when it comes down on that meat hook, there's a sense of it hanging up on that, and that's what we wanted to capture. And when Terry came down, it was horrifying.
It's probably one of the most iconic horror killings in history.
That moment when the camera's, it goes down my body and you can see it, the bucket below, that. Didn't you have to cut that a bit for censors, Kim?
Well, that was the only blood that you see in that scene. You never see the hook penetrate the body or blood emerge from the body.
But people swear they see the hook going their back. Going to her back.
You had it last. I gave it to you, remember? What'd you do with it?
Well, I don't know. Didn't I give it back to you?
No, I didn't have it when I got out of the van. You just never gave it back to me.
All right, I'll look for it.
Both of these actors said both Paul Partain and Marilyn Burns said that in this scene where they're arguing over the flashlight, they said they really did become
I think you better stay here.
angry at each other.
He wouldn't let go.
Partly because of the scene, partly because of forgetting the lines, partly because of adding lines to the moment. And
partly because of heat, partly because of tired.
Right.
Yeah, those things are a big factor.
Yeah.
Also, trying to push this wheelchair around over this ground, was just awful. And they were both hot, tired, and irritable.
Right. I have to say though about the meat hook scene, that we started at 9 in the morning. It went on till noon. It was the most fun. Gunnar and I had a great time staging the scenes, even though we had to film, 30 takes of this angle, 30 takes of that angle, 30 takes. We were exhausted.
That's the way Toby worked.
But it was the most involved that Toby was with us. So
Do you remember Do you remember what we used to hang you on that meat hook, Terry?
The parachute strapping.
I thought it was pantyhose.
Yeah.
Usually we strapped it.
That was the rap party.
That I had to wear was made of parachute strapping, shaped in the shape of a chastity belt, with foam in the crotch, so that when the strap was pulled up and the hook went over the loop went over the hook, that's
Right.
when it pulled up into my crotch, of course. And so to keep everything in place, Dottie the night before had come up with sewing a pair of pantyhose legs and pinning them under that swimsuit because you didn't want to see it, you wanted to camouflage it from the camera, but you had to have something that would keep it in place under the swimsuit because after all it was backless.
You know how many $5 bets I've won? Betting people that you see the meat hook go all the way through you.
Oh, yeah. People want to,
And they go, oh, yeah, it goes right. I said, yeah. No, it doesn't. Oh, but it's $5. They go. And then we just fast forward it.
Oh, well, here's a funny
I
one.
always just say it's your own sick brain that finishes the image,
I was reading on the comments on YouTube, and one kid came on, probably about 14, and he said, I didn't know Pam was topless in this thing.
This is it. This is my famous scene here.
Stop the,
And to get ready for this, I had them blindfold me so I could get myself all worked up, since I hadn't seen Leatherface, in costume. So that was my nod to the Stanislavski method. And it worked so good that when I actually see Leatherface in the next couple of minutes, I let out with a blood-curdling scream.
It's like a girl scream, Alan.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I go screaming out of there, and then Toby yells, "Cut!" Comes over and puts his arm around me. He says, "Great scream, Alan, but you got to wait for Gunnar to get into the scene."
Yeah, when I watch it, Alan, I think to myself, it's a shame they didn't have those Indie Spirit Awards back then. We would have just, gone to town, baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
Alan, you need to tell the story about your parents' first viewing of the film and this scene.
Well, just a minute. When I see the hook and then the freezer, and we're just getting ready for that. And when this scene is over, and there we go. It's coming. That's it. Now that shot, that's like 45 years ago, and I'm still getting headaches. So that's one situation there. And then when the movie finally came out, my parents were retired in Florida, and they ended up seeing it at a porno theater back then. And the second feature, I think, was Debbie Does Dallas or Debbie Does Dialysis. I forget which one it was. And when they saw that happening, as soon as they got home, they ended up calling me. Well, in the movie, my mother stands up and in her native language starts yelling for me not to go into the house. And then when they got home, they ended up calling me to make sure that I was okay.
The scene definitely works.
Oh yeah.
And Gunnar
Gunner's terrific here.
Gunnar Hansen was great in moments like this where he's no words, but he's.
What about those teeth? Were those his real teeth, or? Because he needed some cosmetic dentistry work, that's for sure.
No, they were going to have us wear all kinds of horrible things in this film. When we first got together, Kim, remember the hog eye that Walter Barnes was going to put in my eye? But it was so painful I couldn't do it. And I never told you this, but the only reason why... Oh, my cab's here. I got to go. The only reason why I decided to go ahead and do the film was because we went over to Walter Barnes's house, and he was but besides a very fine plastic surgeon, he was a photographer for Playboy. And so the hallways and all the places were wonderful 18 by 20 images of Playboy models. And I thought, well, if we're going to hang out with these people, I'll go ahead and I'll do the film.
Well, plus all the women who worked for him, he had augmented.
Sculpted, John.
But they were gorgeous.
There was not an unattractive woman in his office, and there were no men who worked for him.
No.
This was before the era of superstar special effects makeup guys, and so a lot of people ask which superstar special effects makeup guy did the special effects makeup on Texas Chainsaw, and I always tell them, well, it was just a guy, it was just a plastic surgeon that was, a local plastic surgeon that came in and created this stuff.
He was a terrific photographer, a sculptor, and a painter. His artwork was beautiful. He had this house tucked up in the hills on the north side of Austin. There was sort of a Frank Lloyd Wright kind of thing. Dug into the rocky hill behind it with a concrete and tile in-ground swimming pool, and he was very proud of the house. His office was also there, and here comes that scene. But he had a sliding glass door and a platform outside of his second floor master bedroom that was over the deep end of the pool, so he could get up in the morning, open the door, and dive into the pool.
And he also had a trophy wife who walked through the house with matching Afghan hounds in either hand. They were gorgeous. They were so beautiful.
Well, they were show hounds, Ed. They were made to go to those shows. They had cosmetic surgery themselves.
Yeah, he was living the life, man.
Oh,
he really
God,
was.
really? Austin, 45 years ago?
Name?
Walter Barnes.
Walter Barnes.
No,
okay.
Charles Barnes.
Oh, what?
Charles.
Who's Walter Barnes?
I think he was a legislator.
I think he played the cook and wagon
I bought
train.
it. Charles Barnes? Are you sure?
Something Barnes.
Dr. Barnes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. That was his first name.
We should also probably talk about the fact that the movie was under intense pressure, under intense money pressure, because the principal investor, Bill Parsley, the lobbyist for Texas Tech University, thought you and Toby were couple of whippersnappers who didn't really know what you were doing and was trying to take the control of the picture back all the time that it was being made, and that was causing especially a lot of tension for Marilyn Burns at Sally, because she was Bill Parsley's close friend, girlfriend, whatever, and was having to calm him down every night and convince him not to intervene in the movie.
Yeah, he made over Marilyn like you wouldn't believe, man.
Yeah, we were always jealous, Joe Bob, because we'd be sitting out there in the heat, suffering, and Marilyn would go sit in Jay's air-conditioned Lincoln Continental, and we'd be sitting there going, fuck.
Yeah, but she was keeping him from rolling up the carpet on us.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you could have told us that, Ken, and we would have been a little more supportive.
She said every night I was talking him out of withdrawing his support of the film and somehow taking control of it. I don't know what I guess he controlled the checkbook, but the film was in danger. every night, apparently.
Stop.
Well, it's hard to say to what extent because Maryland was indeed the buffer there.
Yeah.
But also, I think he had a great deal of faith in Ron Bozeman too.
Yeah.
I think that was powerful.
Here's another scene you can put bets on. People swear they see the saw go into Franklin and a bunch of guts come out.
Yeah.
No, you don't. It's shot from behind, you dumbass.
Yeah, that was Dottie Pearl. Makeup. I think she was doing makeup on this film.
Yeah, the late great Dottie Pearl
was spitting red blood out of her mouth in front of the lens in the scene where he's cut. In the scene where the chainsaw goes into Franklin in the wheelchair.
So they were spitting on Leatherface, I guess.
And then these scenes where they're running through the cockleburs and the branches, bushes. Marilyn said these were the most injurious scenes.
Oh, they look like such fun. I would love to do those.
Well, her hair gets stuck
beat up.
real in here, I think.
Mesquite is hard, bad stuff.
Oh, that is nasty stuff.
And it was dead too, so it was just awful, as impenetrable.
Yeah,
it truly was.
Is this shot at night? Is it night for night, or is this daytime and it just made it look like it's at night?
No, it was night.
It was night.
Didn't shoot any day for night, except interiors, of course. We were going to shoot day for night. But.
yeah, this looks brutal. I mean, you can see she went through hell. They went through hell.
Yeah, she required some extractions after that scene.
Extraction.
Now here comes my favorite part with Jim Seedow. Oh no, not yet, not yet.
It's too bad she's not here to give her impressions of what this truly was like.
You know, I bet there are some great interviews that maybe you could splice in from her talking about it, Kim.
Yeah, she didn't do that many interviews in her lifetime, but
no, she did a lot of Q&As and talked about stuff. Yeah.
She talked about. I asked Toby why this chase goes on and on and on and he said he said this is what he likes to do. It's like it's the
movie.
He feels like he's increasing the stakes. But he puts in these little comic moments every time there's a transition in the chase, Leatherface going around a corner, in a sort of Keystone Cops kind of way.
Yeah, overruns.
He gets that quizzical expression, like, what am I going to do now, So,
Jane and I got busted big time and told to shut up when he would go by and have to come back, because we would always go, whoop, 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 whoop. And Toby was like, cut that out.
A lot.
Yeah, we saw, what was the Peckinpah film? Straw Dogs came out in 73.
I love that film.
And Toby and I went to see it, and we left the theater just drained. It was just exhausting.
It was good.
Intense.
Rats' life.
Pardon me?
Rats' life.
Yeah.
That's
Anyway,
the best line from the movie.
we really wanted that kind of intensity out of Chainsaw, and I think this is Toby's way of pushing it to try to get that level.
Yeah, that was a really violent, frightening film. Strawdogs.
Yeah, pretty much with hillbillies too. I mean, Scottish hillbillies.
Scottish hillbillies, yeah. And Susan George and Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman.
All right.
Yeah, Susan George.
I always heard that this was explained like a nightmare that you just couldn't get out of, and that's why it goes on and on.
You want to wake up, but you can't.
Well, the idea was it's what we called it nightmare syntax. That was that at every moment where it seemed to be that you were going to be led to salvation, it turned inward on you, and all things only became worse. So she runs back into the chainsaw.
Right.
You know, she thinks that light is going to, and it turns into the house of horrors. So she runs to the service station. Well, that only, turns into, furthering horrors. It never leads to the. Go ahead.
But Jim comes off as, he comes off as kind and gentle, so it really fakes you out because, he's got that split personality. 1 minute he looks, he changes from one moment to the next like he's schizophrenic. He plays it so beautifully.
Well, there's no reason to torture the poor girl.
He's both the Cassandra and the ghoul, isn't he?
Yes. I love him in this. I just think
God, he's marvelous in this film. You know what? We're all pretty goddamn good in this movie.
There was some legal reason that one union actor had to be in the film, and Jim was that union actor. I think he was the only SAG actor in the film.
Perfectly cast.
He was, but I don't recall the obligation you're talking about.
I'd love to have that stove.
No one remembered why that was the case, but he came up from Houston to do the role. But Jim had toured with the famous actress Eve Le Gallienne in the 30s.
Oh, wow.
He and his wife had done a lot of off-Broadway in New York and were...
I didn't realize Ruth was an actress.
Yeah, they both were, and that's how they met, and they were really at the pinnacle of serious theater in the early days of off-Broadway in New York, and then they settled in Houston, and they ran a theater called Theater Suburbia in Houston for many years. But Jim thought it was kind of a lark, the picture. He was, but he was proud of it. His children were not.
Well, we met Jim working on a picture called The Wind Splitter that was shot in Columbus, Texas a few years before. And he had a little role in there. That's where we got to know him.
Well, maybe it was the Texas Film Commission that required one SAG member, Kim. Do you think that could have been it?
No.
Could be. He was also the only actor who didn't have a piece of the film. They gave him somehow he got an option. You can either take cash or take a percentage, and he said, "Oh, I'll take the cash."
I was on deferment too. I didn't get a piece of it.
Oh, okay.
It was an option. You could get paid a little bit more cash if you didn't take that deferment and or percentage. But we encouraged them to take less money up front so we'd have more to spend on the film.
Right.
And some did and some didn't. But who in the world at this point would have faith in this particular product making you a profit? Almost 50 years later, still putting money in your pocket. As opposed to any other venture. What?
You know what Andy Devine said to me? He said, "Oh, Terry, that goddamn thing will never come out of the fucking can." quote unquote.
Yeah.
You know,
Who was this, Terry?
Jingles. You know from
Yeah, Terry,
Andy
you know, my
Devine.
voice is
Bill
much
Hitchcock.
deeper than Andy Devine's.
Yeah, we were doing a play together toward the end, and anyway, so Andy, you know, Kim and Toby wanted me to do a pickup scene, and I wanted to go off to make $600 a week and do a play, Lizzie and the Rainmaker, and I was, you know, so we had a big argument, and I was all worried, and Andy finally turned around to me and he said that.
I love this
Here's a
moment
great
where-
line. This is a great line coming up.
I love this moment where Jim has to run back in and turn off the lights before he can.
This is my favorite line in the film.
Enough to drive a man out of business.
He's so good in this part.
That's dialogue by Kim Henkel.
This was a fun scene.
Yeah, did you come up with the look what your brother did to the door?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
on
in
the-
the
on the
actual
spot.
text, but yeah, it's scribbled
Priceless.
on, you know, the back pages of my shooting script, you know.
It's my favorite line.
I
And he didn't
remember
really
Kim
wanna
always
hurt
having
her,
like
right?
a legal pad, constantly making notes, and sometimes he'd tear off a piece of paper and hand it to an actor, you know, say, try this.
Jim said they had to do this more than once because he wasn't hitting her hard enough, and he was afraid to poke her too hard, and they kept making him hit her harder and harder and harder until finally he said, "I started to enjoy it a little bit."
They weren't
Well, you
shy
know-
about their misogyny, let me tell you.
You know, we were young. There are ways of doing things a lot easier than we knew how to do them sometimes. So I mean, you know, half the time she's not even in frame, and he could have just wailed away, but you know, she's still down there.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't have put something in the bag instead of Marilyn, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no reason to have her
Right.
even down there.
No, he could have been hitting
Right.
a duffel
Yeah,
bag.
that wouldn't have been very
Right.
Toby Hooperish though, Kim.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on, let's be frank.
I'll be frank, you be earnest.
Yeah. How do you think I got those gashes on my shins from hitting that pail?
This is
That's
another
a
great,
beautiful
great
shot.
scene
Beautiful,
here.
Yeah.
beautiful. Look at that dust. Just backlit with those headlights.
Told you to stay away.
God damn, that's a gorgeous shot.
I wish I had trouble with those lights, though.
I bet you did.
What kind of stick was that he was using, Ed?
It was an oak dowel that they'd taken out of where the tape hangs on the gaffer's tape.
And where did you guys
"Hey,
get
this
that?
is good. Use this.
Where'd you get that truck, Kim?
God, where did we get that truck?
I love that old truck. It's so
me
perfect.
too.
I don't know. I can't remember what the story of that truck is.
Had to be a crew member.
They were a dime a dozen back then.
Anybody got a truck?
Dime a dozen.
Kim, I think you told me that you would watch some criminals in Texas who had this conventional morality about their crimes, and that's how you incorporated that into the character of the cook, who's obviously doing vile things every day, but has this conventional morality about his family and his house and his.
Yeah, in part it was from the what do you call it, the Candyman murders in Houston, and this guy named Elmer Wayne Henley.
Kim, did you write that line? Don't mean you have to like it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things when he goes, don't mean you have to like it.
There's no need to torture the poor girl.
Yeah, these are the scenes of some of the greatest screams in history.
Oh,
You
she
should
put
probably
the
put these in a
scream
library and
queen,
sell
didn't
them.
I thought you was in a hurry.
I don't think anybody had ever seen a scene in which the tormentors were having so much fun doing what they were doing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that has been on screen before. Never. A lot of firsts in
And
this
we're just
film.
as dysfunctional as every family you've ever grown up with.
Yeah, it reminds me of my home life.
I'm just surprised that when the first reviews came out, that all the comic moments were missed. Were totally missed.
They never mentioned any of them.
Well, at some point, Bill Parsley was really upset with the script because he thought some parts of the dinner table scene, I think, were just too funny, and that it was going to ruin the whole thing.
Well, he wasn't exactly a cinema scholar, you know.
No, because what made it work is Marilyn isn't laughing.
Right.
We are. Marilyn's not.
Right. And the other thing that makes it work is that Leatherface is crazy and you're crazy, Ed, but the cook is only half crazy.
Right.
and he's trying to manage the crazy of the other two to I don't know, to keep some kind of seriousness or what do you call it? Middle class respectability about what they're about to do.
Decorum there. Yeah. And the hammer scene here, I don't know how well you can see him in the background, but he keeps running in and out of the room, and for one moment he's jumping up and down saying, hit the bitch. And the next he runs off and hides behind the kitchen.
So did Jay Parsley ever get to like the film and like the product?
I think he liked the check.
He liked the money he got, I'm sure.
Well, unfortunately, we never get any money until way late in this film's history. But
So he was probably dead by then.
He died in 1990.
He's sold. Go ahead.
So he was around for a while. He was around long. He invested in A Nightmare on Elm Street, so he was doing fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't really know when he passed because he was probably about 50 or 55 when we.
I think he was just in his mid-40s, but we were so young. We thought
We were so young.
You know,
you were over 30. You were like 8.
we called Jim Seedow the old man, and he was 20 years younger than we are now. So
Right.
All Bill Parsley's old political buddies got caught up in nobody remembers this today, but there was a thing called the Sharpstown scandal.
Oh yeah.
And he kind of lost his cachet in Austin. But he befriended the guys at New Line Cinema who made Nightmare on Elm Street and a lot of other films, and so he became an investor with them. And,
Okay.
so he ended up making a lot of money.
Okay. Yeah.
Now this year,
I remember
Ian
the.
Bob's.
Go ahead.
this Kim talked to me about this, and he said, have you ever seen a baby nurse? And I said, yeah. My sister had 2 kids, and she always been breastfed, and or 3 kids. And I've seen several babies nursed. He goes, you know how once the milk starts flowing and they get all excited and everything? I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. He goes, do that.
John, did they do all of these scenes in one day?
Yeah.
Your scenes?
The scene upstairs they did on a different day, but this was all done in one.
But when you were in the grandpa makeup, that was all one day?
No, I had 2 days of grandpa makeup.
2 days, okay.
But this day I was in it for, you figure 5 hours in the makeup chair and then 25 hours shooting.
And how old were you when you were grandpa?
20.
20 years old, okay.
Yeah.
I think you were just 19, John. I don't think you
No, I
broke
was 20.
20.
It was 1973.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. He told me he was 20.
Yeah.
He was just lying, Terry. He wanted to get into your pants.
I knew that. I said, you don't look
I was
20.
like, boy, you wouldn't have anything to do with me. I thought I just was crazy about you. You'd have nothing to do with me.
I was a little snobette. You're right.
And then Sally Richardson, you know, I was her like little servant, and she was really flirty with me. She asked me to go out and have beers with her after work one afternoon. So I was like, yeah, sounds good. And I told Ed Neal, and Ed said, don't do that, man. I said, why? He goes, she's sleeping with Toby. I was like, oh, okay.
You guys are revealing all this laundry here.
I know, the dirt is coming out.
Well, Sally
Sally
and Toby are both gone now, so.
Sally was a darling, a real sweetheart.
I loved her.
Yeah, she was great.
She was doing still photography, and she was also one of the editors on the film.
Yeah, she was.
And Sally was my downstairs neighbor when I lived on Robin's Place, and that's how I got into Eggshells, which was the first movie, which is how I got into Chainsaw.
I
just remember when
incestuous nightmare.
I thought she was first AD.
That's what it says on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was doing still photography. But we didn't really have.
Well, I just remember that when everything, like when all the crew was having problems, or, you know, Toby was upset with Jay, or whatever was going on, because as a cast, we had very little knowledge of the behind the scenes on that stuff. But I remember Sally would always be so calm and sweet, and she'd always be smiling, you know, while everybody else was grumbling in the background.
Yeah, she was terrific.
Yeah, she kept everything.
Were these pickup scenes after the movie? Were these later shot?
Yeah.
That one is there.
Yeah.
But these close-ups?
This particular
the ones with Marilyn are worse. The ones with
the eyeball.
Yeah, but this is not with Ed and Jim, but the ones with Marilyn are. We shot them in this little garage apartment close to downtown Austin.
I love the way Jim starts getting so, you know, he's laughing, and then he gets real serious, and he goes back to singing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the reason that they did these extra shots, Kim? These pickup shots?
These aren't pickup shots. It's just the close-up.
It's only the close-ups of Maryland, because he felt he needed more eyeballs. Of course, and had to go on and on.
More eyeball.
13 hours shooting the eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
We had more cowbell. He needed more cowbell.
Just to increase the terror.
More eyeball.
Yeah, of course.
Kim, I was doing a workshop out in L.A. years ago with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and there were some industrial light and magic people there. And they wanted to know how did the filmmakers get those lines in the eyes, the red broken vessels, without the modern technology that we have now at ILM? And I said, because the shoot was so long, they were real. They were real.
And that's one time, Ed, I will say you are not exaggerating at all.
I've told you a million times, I do not exaggerate.
Now, this is just stay here. If this had been a union film, we would have been shut down.
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Heath would still be in jail.
Yes, that's true. And Marilyn did not hold back at all. I mean, she was 1,000% in everything. And when she's running into the garage and falls down on the floor, and she comes bursting through the door. That was just a raw, rough concrete. She did it 100 times and just tore her knees to shreds.
Wow.
Miss her.
And she is so tiny. I mean, when you remember those last shows that we did together, I mean, she seemed like she weighed 90 pounds or something.
Well, at that point, she'd shrunk quite a bit.
She had, but she was so tiny anyway.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, and this is coming from Terry McMahon, who is tiny.
Yeah.
And I felt like a giant in comparison to Marilyn, you know what I mean?
Oh, I wish I had those
remember I was helping her because she...
I do too, John. That's a great one.
What's that? Say it again.
I said I wish I had those shoes.
The shoes, John?
Yeah.
Or the suit?
My brown and white spectators.
I thought this
I'd like
was
to have that sledgehammer, too.
a great scene.
Good sound effect, too.
Trying to give Grandpa the honor.
Who Foleyed all this stuff?
And look how excited
Wayne?
Jim's getting in the background.
There's no
You know?
Foley, John.
He's like,
It was
"Oh,
just all handmade, you know.
Nothing in post?
It was always a little
Go,
unclear.
Sally, go!
There she goes.
How did she get away, Ed?
She jumps through the window.
No, how did she get away from you? You were holding her over the tub.
Trying to get the hammer.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dan.
I bent down to get the hammer, and then
Okay.
she goes, "This is my minute. I'm out of here."
She was quick.
Quick and small.
Quick and small, that's right.
These long shots are beautiful.
Yeah, Ed worked his magic there because he could have overrun Maryland in a nanosecond. So he
Right.
took a circuitous route
Yeah.
and had made fun with it.
I went back and forth, just cutting her back.
Yeah.
And she was great because I was actually touching her on the back with my knuckle rather than the knife, you know, and she was wonderful at reacting every time.
Yeah.
Oh, great scene.
And then the truck.
Comes in.
What's that?
That worked pretty well for a dummy held up
You-
piece of
No
wire.
Yeah,
kidding, man.
really well.
Definitely.
Totally believable.
Definitely.
Help!
Yeah,
Ed,
Ed.
some moron told me one time, "Oh, you did your own stunt in the scene?" I said, "Absolutely, that's me flying."
look at him pull her in
That's me
there.
throwing poor 90-pound Sally into the roof of the truck the first take.
Did he make those marks on the door like that?
No,
No, we had a little. We had a. Go
just
ahead.
going to say Bob made a sort of a skin that he stuck on, and that was what Gunner worked against.
Oh,
And Gunner gave that to my brother-in-law. He had it in his house for years. I don't know what happened to it.
Hey, Ed Gwynn, I saw, I think the second time I saw this film was after the original release in Chicago. Was at one of the grindhouses down the Loop in Chicago in the afternoon, and it was almost an all-black audience. And when the Black Mariah pulls up and you jump out, the whole place went fucking nuts.
I know. It's the big moment. Thank God. Relief.
It's it has a strange attraction or I don't know what to call it, but a number of rappers seem to be very fond of it. Travis Scott did a whole thing on it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's another
I
iconic
meant to
shot.
mention when we saw the scene with Leatherface falling down the chainsaw, cutting into his thigh. It is the only time you ever see the saw penetrate flesh in the movie.
True.
Oh, it is, yeah.
And Bob got burned because the plate underneath the meat heated up real quick. I don't mean Bob Gunner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gunner did.
Who
Yeah.
drove the truck at the end? That little truck that she.
Perry Lorenz.
Perry.
Perry
Okay.
Lorenz said, "Hey, look,
Yeah.
my favorite part, my name."
Joe Bill Hogan. We didn't talk about him.
He was
we
he
did
was
briefly in the cemetery
drunk when Kim and I picked him up in Austin, and we had to share the pickup, a bench seat in a '73 Chevy pickup truck with him.
Yeah, we picked him up, a little just gingerbread house with a white picket fence where he lived with his mother. And he was perfectly sound and sober when we picked him up, but about halfway out to Leander, it became apparent that, he was just 3 sheets to the wind. Later figured out that he was so nervous about playing this drunk in the scene that he decided to get drunk.
Aww.
He was an amazingly good actor. He was on that thing that one of the best children's shows ever on television, Carrasco Lindes.
Yeah, he did. A lot of theater. It was odd that he had such stage fright at that moment, but that's evidently what happened.
Well, I appreciate everyone's comments. Does anybody have any thoughts about the difference between the way you thought about the film when you were working on it and the way you thought it now, the way you think about it 47 years later? When
you have to have another hour for that.
Joe, we call it, when we're doing these like autograph shows, we call it the film that won't die. Every single year, there's a completely new audience for the film. They couldn't see it the year before; they weren't old enough, and now they can. It's amazing.
Give me a ballpark figure, Ed, of how many times you've sat through the film all the way through. How many times have you actually watched the entire?
I never make it all the way through because they always ask, they'll ask you questions right in the middle of the film. So it's hard to make it all the way through. But I mean, the first time I ever went to the theater to see it, I'd never seen it in the theater, and there was this row of sorority girls in front of me, and they were all eating popcorn, and I waited until about a third of the way through the film, and I leaned over and tapped one of them on the shoulder, and I said, "You like this movie?" And the popcorn goes up, the drinks go up, and they didn't run out the aisle. They went into the next aisle. And I went, no, I panicked. I said, "Oh my God." I know. I said, "I'm going to get these people killed. Shut the hell up." And I never went to a theater again to see it because I was scared I would do that again because I'm bad.
So I saw the movie 2 times in 35 years, from 1974 till 2008, 2 times.
Wow.
The first, and then somebody had a chili party for me. I had slipped and told them I was in it, because I didn't tell anybody I was in it. And then I came out in 2008, and Bill and Alan and I were going to see it on the big screen in Erie, Pennsylvania. And so Bill and I, were really waiting to see it and to see ourselves when we were so young. It was pretty exciting for us at that point. I was just out, Bill was just out. We came out at the same time, 35 years later. And Alan would not shut up. And we both finally said, "We're going to put gaffer's tape on your mouth, Alan. We're trying to watch ourselves here."
Well, let me ask you guys this. Marilyn Burns thought that the film was a resume killer. She went out to L.A. and she tried to have a career. She had one good role. She was Linda Kasabian in the Manson TV movie. But then she felt like because she was known for this film, that there was a prejudice against her.
Oh, forget it.
Do you think that was true of this?
We all took it off our resumes.
Absolutely.
Because this is before horror was cool.
This was controversial. I had it on my resume, and I was in Dallas, and I went to an audition for some dinner theater thing, And the director looked at me and he said, "What in the hell is that?" You know, I mean, it was so pointedly condescending, and it was like, you know, nobody recognized it at that time. Now, I think technically it did the tech guys, you know, it was great for them. But as an actor, you know, it took 10 years to get people to really pay attention.
But it works the other way, too. I mean, I was auditioning for JFK, and they went, "Well, we don't know. And Oliver Stone looks down at the resumes, and he goes, "He was in what? Well, find him something, for God's sake. I'm going to talk about that film." So I was cast in JFK, just so Ollie could... How'd you do this with the girl in the red shorts and the swing goes away?
Well, why didn't you tell him that I was available? I was going on to New Then.
I did. I told him.
Why didn't you tell him I was available?
She's got the...
Listen, by the time the thing became famous, and we were in L.A., and we did the article, remember, Kim, for the L.A. Chronicle? Remember? Okay, because you called me to do an interview with them, and that was 10 years at least after. I think it was in '84, to be honest with you. And I was no longer an ingenue at the time, you know. And Toby, I remember running into Toby, and I said, he said, "Well, what are you now, Terry, 34? And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, God damn it, don't tell anybody."
I was working in cable TV all through the 80s, and I was working in premium cable TV, which has no commercials, and so you have no rules on content. And yet, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and 5 or 6 other films were on the list of too grisly for cable. They would not.
What?
They would not. They would not program certain films, in spite of it being a pay channel. You know, they had the right to. You know, they didn't have any censorship problems, but it was considered that controversial, and it was used frequently by politicians as their favorite example of the moral decay of America. You know,
exactly. And do you know?
Look at it now. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
On top of that, you know, when I first came out in 2008, one of the first people to pursue me for an interview was a guy from Sweden. And he was coming over for other things, and he set up an interview, and I was living in Venice Beach, so he walked around with me because it had been so controversial. They had psychiatrists, you know, because I looked at this thing and I could hardly understand anything in Swedish, and he explained to me that, you know, psychiatrists and psychologists were all sitting around discussing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but they did not want it shown in Sweden. It was banned for 10 years.
And I think it was banned.
I just wanted to add that I grew up in the Bronx, and I used to read Archer Winston on my way home and read all of his reviews of movies, and he would give out stars. When he reviewed Chainsaw, he said it owed stars. That's how bad it was. So I stopped reading him after that.
What's interesting...
Rex Reed said it much better. He said, "It's the Jaws of the midnight movies."
Roger Ebert in 1974, and he loved the film. And I lived in Chicago, and Ebert wrote for Chicago sometimes, and he had compared me to Dustin Hoffman, the Little Big Man. The old man character in Little Big Man that he had done. And so I run into Roger Ebert in O'Rourke's, which is a really authentic old Irish pub in Old Town, down the road from my apartment one afternoon, and he used to go in there all the time. And I'd never met him. And so I just walked over to him and said, "Roger Ebert?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I'm John Dugan." He goes, "That sounds familiar." I said, "I played Grandpa in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre." I said, "Well, oh, wow." And I said, "I'd just like to thank you for comparing me to Dustin Hoffman." And I said, "Wow, You know what? I didn't really realize I'd done that. But and I would see him occasionally. I would see him occasionally in Chicago, and he always referred to me, like all my friends do, by just my last name. How you doing, Dugan? I'd say, how you doing, Ebert? Occasionally we'd have a pint together, till he eventually quit drinking. But he was a legendary drinker, by the way.
Yeah, it took people a long time to discover that. I think because of its intensity, that was funny and satirical and silly, and that there were a lot of things going on. I mean, you can entertain yourself and just listening to the news on the background on the radio is quite a little story in itself.
Yeah,
well, the title alone is kind of a turn off to, people go in with a preconceived idea of what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, there have been quite a few movies since then that have used chainsaws as weapons. The chainsaw is about the worst choice of weapon you can have, and it's not used as a really, that much in the original movie, but the movie popularized the chainsaw as a potential weapon, and so there are all kinds of, many directors have attempted to use it in a very sinister way in various scenes, and it never quite works because it's just too bulky and it's too hard to handle, and it looks like it's too easy to escape from.
It's a viral TV commercial now where I can't remember what it's for, but the kids are
Geico,
running
I think it's a Geico commercial.
As a Geico.
The best commercials ever filmed.
Let's hide behind the chainsaw.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's get into the running van.
What are you crazy?
No, let's get hide behind all those chainsaws.
But
the Leatherface character, the look on his face.
I roll.
Yeah.
The interesting thing to me about the critical reception, though, all those years that it was considered an outlaw film and a film that couldn't be shown on TV. The same New York intellectuals who attacked Chainsaw were the intellectuals who defended Deep Throat, which has, when it was under a censorship situation, and actually won that battle. It's like they got the guy out of jail, and they were going to send everybody to jail for Deep Throat, and it was considered like a symbol of America's moral decay and everything. And so they won that battle, but when the censorship battle against Chainsaw, they didn't want to get involved. And in fact they called it the pornography of violence, and they considered it beyond the bounds of protection of the First Amendment. So it was
that Bryanston? Was that Bryanston's movie?
Both of them were Bryanston.
Yeah.
But the guy who made the films for Andy Warhol's Factory, the horror films that are unwatchable, Paul Morrissey, all those guys that worked for Andy Warhol were the guys who attacked Chainsaw as being, the reprehensible, undefendable, best argument for censorship, ever made.
But Andy Warhol's Frankenstein ran on a double feature for a year with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So
and what's the better movie? Chainsaw is a much better movie, And so
Joe Bob, they must have not ever seen Ishtar.
Right. So anyway, thank you for everyone for doing this. I think it's an important piece of history to try to get everybody together for the cast reunion. I'm sure many of you have been to other cast reunions, but this was a wonderful thing, and I hope we can have many more retrospectives of Chainsaw. And we didn't mention any of it. We intentionally didn't mention any of its sequels, remakes, other versions, including one of the best ones is the one you directed, Kim, which has several different names. But when I saw it, it was called Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and starring Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey.
And me.
Actually, they're not the stars, but they have third and fourth billing. That's how good the movie was. Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger had third and fourth billing in the movie, but that was an excellent. That was one of the good sequels, and then the era of the big budget remakes. I hope you all got a little bit of coin from those.
Thank you. Yes, 2013 was a very good year.
Okay, but I think nothing compares to the original because of just the context, the time and place, and the wonderful backstory. And we also didn't go into the fact that you mentioned Bryanston Pictures. We also didn't go into the fact that for 10 years the movie was kind of controlled by the Colombo family, the mafia family in New York. They owned Bryanston Pictures, and
the
because
Perino
of that,
brothers.
Yeah, the Perino brothers
Perino.
are called the Piranha brothers by the lawyers
Piranha,
involved.
yeah. That's the real massacre. That's the real massacre.
So
and because,
you need to include that when you do the technical the technical show.
But because of the 10 or 12 year delay, the sequel didn't come out until, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 didn't come out until, I want to say 1986 or something like that. It's 13 years later. And by then, we'd had Halloween, we'd had Nightmare on Elm Street, we'd had Friday the 13th, we'd had all these other big horror franchises. And so Chainsaw didn't really get the boost it would have gotten if it had had some normal distributor, other than Bryanston, and if it hadn't been embroiled in years of litigation and had all those problems. But it's interesting that nothing can keep it down. Despite all that, it's still more revered than ever. All the 5 decades later.
There was some article in around 1980. I was living in LA, and I can't remember. Kim, do you remember? Perhaps it was somebody, Scorsese. I don't know, John Carpenter, whoever it was, but they were talking about all the directors that were big on Chainsaw, and it was on a People magazine.
Definitely.
There was also a
three-part
article in the Sunday LA Times about what happened.
Right, I did an interview for that.
Do you remember that?
But this one was People magazine, and it was huge directors. I can't remember. It was like big names, and I was, shocked because obviously it had done nothing for me, and I was like, gee, I wonder if I could get an agent now, I mean.
Yeah.
John?
The first time I ever interviewed Toby Hooper, we were at a restaurant in Los Angeles somewhere, and Mel Brooks came over to the table to pay his respects to Toby.
Oh, man, how great is that?
Yeah.
I love him.
John, I was going to tell you, when the article you're talking about was written by John Needlesater, and he was a guy that was jobbed in by the Los Angeles Times because they were so fearful of assigning it to a normal writer that worked on the staff, because that guy could have easily been found and whacked. So
well,
John
you know what? I've been trying to find that article online.
You can get it on the archive. But what they did was they hid Needlesater in a Motel 6 on the edge of town, and they had runners going back and forth bringing the latest installment, and so that they could never lay a hand on anybody at the Los Angeles Times.
Oh, they were just courier and paperwork back and
because
forth.
he was telling things about the mob. Once he got into once he got into the investigative reporting part of it, it was like, oh my God,
All right, guys, thank you very much.
And thank you for moderating it. I think you did a great job.
thank
Oh,
Thank you, Alan.
excellent job.
All right.
We'll have you back.
Okay. We'll do it again.
That's a great
We'll do it
idea.
again when we can do it live.
Yeah.
Yeah.